Hi, seventh graders. I am here to introduce you to clay today. I would like to tell you some things that you need to know. Whoops, I get on the stick here and things, it's just stuff you need to know to work with clay. Now I'm going to tell you, please don't open your clay until we are ready to actually work with it. Because once you start working with it, it gets dry and your hands dry it out and then it's not workable and then your clay is no good. So having said that, watch the video with me. I'm going to show you some things about clay that I think will be helpful for you to know. 6 stages of clay. The first one is wet clay. That is what is in your bag, like this. It's how we get it in a box. Clay is essentially just soil. And we buy it in boxes. It's been cleaned and ready to go. That's another reason I don't want you to start handling it yet, because if you start to fold your clay and squeeze it and do all kinds of things with it, it can mess things up pretty badly. So first is wet clay. Then we have slip. So you should have in your kit a little cup, kind of like this little cup, that has wet, sloppy clay in it. That's what we use for gluing things together when we're working with clay. And I'm going to be showing you how to use that. Now, when clay is drying, our clay, you can see, looks dark, what you have, but you also have in a packet a little packet of bone dry clay. I put a piece of bone dry clay in there. When clay is between this, and it's not quite this dry yet, it still looks this color, that's called leather hard. So first your clay, when it's drying, when your project is drying, it will be leather hard for a little bit before it becomes bone dry. When it's bone dry, it'll be this color. Let's go to bone dry slide here. Whoops. This is when it's most fragile. It can break the most easily at this phase. I will show you here. This is a little piece of bone dry clay, and note that it's very easy to break it. It crumbles when you break it. You can break yours if you want. You can also do a little experiment with it. This is when clay can be recycled. Even when it's dry, before it's been fired or anything, you can add it to water. And if you want to do this with yours, you can put it in a little cup of water or something, and it will slowly dissolve. I'm going to set it off to the side, and I'll show it to you again in a little bit. And then we can use it again. Once it's been fired, you can't. So when we take this little piece of dry clay object, and we put it in the kiln, and we heat it up to 1945 degrees, it comes out like this. This little screen is hard for me to show you. So it goes from this to this. Notice that it turns white in the kiln. It's also hard like a rock. It also sounds different. If you can hear that, it sort of sounds plasticky. Whoops. And if you can hear this, it sort of sounds like glass. That's what the kiln does to it, the first firing. That's called bisque. Now, like I said, it's gray when it's wet and it fires. It turns lighter gray when it's dry, and it has to be completely dry before it goes in the kiln. And it turns white that first time in the kiln. Wedging is something you do with clay. We get our clay, this clay that you have in the bag, is already wedged. It's ready to go. But sometimes we reclaim clay, like somebody has a mess up and we put it in a bucket and we keep it, and then you have to wedge it because you do not want air pockets in your clay. That can also cause an explosion in the kiln. So we have to be very careful with how we handle the clay. This is our kiln. This looks just like our kiln, which is in our closet here at school. fires at about 2,000 degrees. It'll actually go higher than that, but we have what's called low fire clay. And you're not allowed in the kiln room when it's being fired. And the firing schedule is all computerized. This little red box on the side of the computer sets it for the amount of time it needs to be in there. When it's firing, this is a picture of what it would look like down in the kiln. It gets very, very hot. Our objects, like I said, are fired twice. Once to get to this glass-like, rock-like phase. And that's the bisque fire. And that takes about 12 to 13 hours to fire it. And then it takes another about 24 hours before we can actually open the kiln. The kiln is like a big oven. But think about this. You know how hot it is when you're like taking out cookies or something you're baking from a regular oven? That's only 350 degrees. This is like almost 2,000 degrees. So we can't open it up right away. We have to let it cool down. So normally we don't fire the kiln till it's fairly full, so we have a decent load of things, but we should have that before too long. Now the second firing is the glaze firing. And I didn't bring any glaze over here, but that you would take this piece that's been fired the first time and paint glaze on it. And this picture shows what that is like. And hopefully you will get to glaze your things. I'll have to send glaze home to you after we figure that out. It takes about 8 hours to run a glaze fire, and it takes another 24 hours for the kiln to cool down so we can actually take something out of the glaze fire. So something that goes in like this and then gets painted with glazes may come out something like this. Or like my little cup holder here. It can come out like that. Now it's got glass basically all over it, and it's impervious to water. If you try to put water in this particular container, it would soak it up like a hard sponge. It just would come right through that. It's very porous. So when we do glaze firing, we glaze the bottoms of our objects. You can see this one is glazed on the bottom. And we have to set them up on little stilts that you see here so that they don't just fuse to the shelves that are in the kiln. Now, there are other ways to work with clay. There are many ways to work with clay. Hand building is one. Working on a potter's wheel is another. But working with hand building is what we're going to be doing. Some of the kids in the room will get to try the wheels, hopefully. I haven't figured that out quite yet. So we're going to be doing the pinch method. And the pinch method is shaping clay, and we just sort of pinch to get it into kind of a little bowl shape. And we're going to take those, we're going to make 2 pinch pots and take those and combine them to make an object. So here I have a little, this is a functional object, all right? It's a cup. It's very plain. It's not very decorative. Ceramics are made for a variety of purposes. Some things are simply functional, like this cup that's very plain. So functional art refers to aesthetic objects that serve utilitarian purposes. So in other words, this one is functional. It would be fine for your morning hot chocolate or cocoa or whatever you like to drink. But these mugs then have been made what we call functional and aesthetically pleasing. They're nice to look at. They have designs and things. Some objects are created to be decorative, but not necessarily functional. Like the guy here on the left, he's just a little guy. And this one, but they could be made to be functional, like a spoon rest or a thing to hold your toothbrushes. So we're going to be making a pinch pot, and I'm going to show you that in a second video. But first, I do want to talk about safety with clay. Even though you're not in the studio, you still have to be safe with clay. So clay dust is it dangerous? Clay in itself, like this, is not dangerous. But the dust that comes when it's drying out, and you will notice on your table as you work with it, have extremely tiny pieces of glass in it. You do not want to breathe that. So we take precautions on how we clean up in order not to breathe a lot of dust. And it's worse in the room because we have a lot of dust maybe stirred up when people are working. It shouldn't be too bad for you, but you should still clean up in a safe way. So how to avoid breathing that dust is that you always wet clean. You use a wet paper towel or a wet sponge, wet spray bottles, cleaners, and you never just dust the clay off because that stirs it up and throws it up into the air, and you don't want it in air. We don't want to breathe it. Now, can clay go down the sink? This is very important because you don't want to clog up mom and dad's pipes. And while I'm thinking about it, I'll show you this. I don't know if you can see it or not, probably not, but my little clay here has dissolved into just dirt in the water now, that little bone dry piece I put in there. It will clog your pipes, so you don't want to let any of it go down the drain when you're cleaning up. We have a clay trap that catches the worst of ours, but you do not probably have that at your home. So when you're cleaning up, you may want to take stuff outside and rinse it off. This is going to be a good week for that. If your hands are dirty, a little bit probably won't hurt anything, but get the big chunks off before you go to the sink to clean up. And can I recycle my clay scraps? Yes, and I'm going to send you extra clay so that you will have enough for a second project as we are hopefully working here on the wheel. There will be a bucket here in the classroom where you can put your unused scraps. You can keep yours in a plastic bag. Always keep your clay in a plastic bag, zip-locked shut, because it will dry out, and if it dries out, it's not usable. So you can do that, or you can actually keep it, and I'm going to send you containers like this. When you're working on it, if it will fit in here, you can put it inside here and put the lid on tightly. And that will also keep it from drying out while you're still working on it, because it'll probably take you 2 or 3 class periods to get it done. How much clay do I need? Well, right here, what I have is about 2 pounds total. So about the size of a tennis ball is about 1 pound. And we're going to take one chunk the size of a tennis ball. I'm going to split it in cubes for you, and you are going to be making 1 pinch pot out of each half. And I think that is the end of what I'm going to tell you right now. Now I'm going to make a video and show you then how to make your pinch pots and how to use your slip to attach them and what you need to do from there. So that's all I've got for right now, and I will talk to you in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.